In the quiet golden evenings of Doha, when the sun slowly dipped behind the Persian Gulf, the grand two-story mansion of Dr. Layla Mahmoud Al-Fihri stood like a serene island of silence. Inside lived Dr. Layla, a 47-year-old woman known throughout the city not only for her position as head of nursing at a prestigious private hospital, but also for her kindness, discipline, and calm authority. She was the kind of woman whose presence made others straighten their posture automatically. Yet behind all that strength lived a breathtaking loneliness. Her parents had passed away years ago, and the huge family home remained as a hollow reminder that her life had always been more about responsibility than companionship. She had never married, never pursued a relationship, not because she was incapable of love, but because she had simply never allowed life to slow down long enough for it. Her routine changed unexpectedly when her elderly gardener, who had worked for her for 10 years, returned to his homeland. With her schedule full of emergency shifts and medical conferences, it was impossible for her to maintain the yard herself. Through a local manpower agency, she hired a new gardener, a 31-year-old Indian man named Hari Prasad Singh, from a small town near Bahraich in Uttar Pradesh. On his first day, Layla barely had time to meet him. From her bedroom window, she noticed him pushing the lawnmower quietly, his head lowered, his posture respectful. He worked without unnecessary noise, without laziness, and without the slightest hint of entitlement. When she stepped onto the balcony later that afternoon, he greeted her with a small nod before resuming his work. His humility caught her attention in a way she hadn't expected. 5 days later, they finally met face to face. It was Layla's day off, and she stepped into the garden wearing a light satin robe, holding a glass of warm tea. Hari was watering the plants when he noticed her presence. Startled, he immediately lowered his gaze, placing the hose aside. "Good morning, madame. I hope I didn't disturb you," he said carefully in broken English. Layla smiled, a rare softness in her expression. "Not at all." "Are you from India?" Hari's eyes brightened with relief. "Yes, madam. I came from a—" The days that followed moved gently, as if time itself had slowed down to observe the quiet changes taking place in the big mansion. Layla found herself stepping onto the balcony more often, pretending to check the weather or read a book, when in truth she was simply drawn to the calm presence of Hari. He worked with a sincerity that was rare, never rushing, never complaining, never allowing the slightest untidiness to remain. His work ethic reminded her of the values her father used to speak about: humility, dedication, and the dignity of labor. One morning, Layla came home early from work after feeling unusually exhausted. Her body was warm with fever, her head heavy. She barely managed to reach the living room before collapsing onto the sofa. At that moment, Hari, who had just entered through the gate with his garden tools, froze in alarm. He hurried to her side, unsure how to react. He was not a doctor. He was not even allowed to enter the private areas of the house without permission. Yet something stronger than rules pushed him forward. "Madam, are you all right?" he asked anxiously. Layla barely opened her eyes. "Just fever. I need to rest." Without hesitation, Harry gently supported her shoulders and guided her to her bedroom. His hands trembled slightly, not out of fear, but out of respect. He closed the curtains, placed a light blanket over her, and rushed to fetch a small towel, soaking it in cool water. With slow, careful movements, he placed it on her forehead. She watched him through half-opened eyes, surprised at the tenderness in someone she barely knew. "Madame, please rest. I will stay nearby, just in case you need anything." For the first time in many years, Layla felt cared for, not as a doctor, not as a woman of status, but simply as a human being. The next morning, when she awoke, she found a small steel bowl on her bedside table. Inside was simple Indian porridge, recipe of rice, spices, and ginger. A note beside it read, "I am sorry if this is not good. I made it like my mother used to make when we were sick." Hari Layla smiled softly. Something inside her chest tightened, pain and warmth blending together in a way she could not define. Later that afternoon, when she stepped into the garden, Hari bowed politely. "Madam, I hope you are feeling better." "I am," she replied gently. "Thank you for everything yesterday." Hari quickly looked down. I only did what anyone should do, madam. No, she corrected him softly. You did more. That moment stretched between them like a delicate thread, fragile yet undeniably real. From that day forward, the distance between them began to shrink. It wasn't through long conversations or bold gestures, but through small, sincere acts. Layla would bring tea to the garden and share a few minutes with him. Hari, still shy and careful, slowly grew comfortable enough to smile in her presence. For the first time in many years, Layla felt her heart beating for something, someone, again. The quiet beginning of a love story neither had expected. As the weeks passed, a gentle rhythm began to form between Layla and Harry, an unplanned, delicate pattern stitched together by small gestures and unspoken emotions. Nothing dramatic happened on the surface. No confessions, no bold moves, no crossing of boundaries. Yet every day, in the quiet corners of the house and garden, something warm continued to grow. Layla found herself waking earlier than usual, sometimes just to hear Hari humming old Indian folk melodies as he watered the plants. His voice wasn't extraordinary, yet it had a sincerity that made the entire garden feel alive. On some mornings, she would bring 2 cups of tea to the back garden. The first few times, Hari hesitated, unsure if it was appropriate, but Layla would gently insist. Sit, Hari. Just for a few minutes. The sun is nice today. He would sit awkwardly at the very edge of the bench, as if afraid that even the wooden plank might judge him for being too close. Layla found this endearing. Each interaction revealed a softness in him, something she had never encountered among the confident, polished professionals she worked with at the hospital. One afternoon, as they sat in the shade of the mango tree, Layla asked quietly, "Do you have family back home?" Hari nodded. "Yes, madam. My mother and younger sister. My father passed away when I was in high school. We struggled after that. Life wasn't easy." "And you never married?" Hari's ears reddened slightly as he shook his head. "Not yet. I didn't think I had enough to offer anyone." Layla watched him with a tender gaze. "Sometimes what we offer has nothing to do with money." He lowered his head again, unable to meet her eyes. The days continued like that, simple, quiet, but meaningful. Yet, alongside this warmth, a tension also began to develop. Layla felt it whenever their eyes met for a second longer than usual, whenever Hari hesitated to speak, or whenever she found herself thinking about him late at night. She, a sophisticated woman nearing 50, found her heart reacting like a teenager's. It felt foolish and beautiful at the same time. One night, unable to sleep, Layla stepped onto the balcony. The garden below was submerged in moonlight. Hari was leaving for the day, locking up the side gate. When he looked up and saw her, he paused. "Madam, are you okay?" he asked softly. Layla hesitated, then answered with a calmness she did not feel. "Hari, if someday I say something that might surprise you, would you get angry?" He froze, gripping the gate for a moment before replying. "Madame, I won't be angry." "Then what frightens you?" she asked gently. Harry swallowed hard. "Not me, madam. The world. The world gets angry at people like me." Those words stayed with her all night, echoing in her chest. For the first time, Layla understood the true barrier between them. It was not age, it was not status. It was the world and the quiet, ruthless judgments it carried. The following days moved with a different weight, like the air itself had thickened with unspoken feelings. Layla felt it every time she stepped into the garden. Hari felt it every time he saw her approaching with slow, measured steps. Their interactions were still polite, still careful, still wrapped in respect, but now there was a new silence between them, a silence that did not feel empty, but full. Hari continued to work diligently, but he kept a quiet distance. He no longer lingered after finishing a task. He avoided sitting too long on the garden bench, and if Layla brought tea, he accepted it with gratitude, but placed the cup aside after only a few sips. His politeness had turned into restraint, and Layla sensed it clearly. One evening, Layla found him checking the irrigation pipes near the back kitchen. She approached slowly, her steps echoing lightly against the stone floor. "Hari," she called softly. He straightened immediately, wiping his hands on his trousers, eyes lowered. "Yes, madam." "You've changed," she said. Her voice wasn't accusatory, just quietly wounded. "You don't sit anymore. You don't talk freely. Why?" Hari hesitated, the answer trapped behind his lowered gaze. I'm only trying to protect your respect, madam." "My respect?" Layla frowned gently. "From whom?" "From people," he said finally. "From the world. From those who will never understand this friendship." Layla inhaled deeply. She had always known society could be cruel, but she had never felt its shadow so personally. "Hari," she said softly, "do you think I care what people whisper?" He looked up just enough for her to see the pain in his eyes. "I don't want anyone to blame you, madame. I am a simple man. You are someone the world looks up to. People will not speak against me. They will only speak against you." It was the first time he had spoken so honestly. The raw sincerity in his words shook her. "Why must the world always blame the woman?" Layla whispered, almost to herself. "Why must she always be the one questioned, judged, doubted?" Hari had no answer. He stood silently, hands clasped tightly behind his back. A few days later, Layla received a call from her family in Riyadh. They wanted her to attend a large family gathering, one with distant relatives, old acquaintances, and the usual circle of people who like to measure a woman's worth by her marital status. Layla already knew what the topic would be. Her mother had been urging her for years to remarry, while her siblings believed she was wasting her life by staying alone. She didn't want to go. The weight of those expectations always suffocated her. But refusing would raise even more questions. Before leaving, she went to the garden and quietly placed a handwritten note on the small tool shelf where she knew Hari kept his gloves. "I will be gone for 3 days. Do not change. Take care of the house. Take care of your heart, too." Hari read the note that evening, and for the first time in years, a man who had endured hardship without complaint felt something break quietly inside him, something soft, something painfully beautiful. The house felt strangely hollow during Layla's absence, too still, too quiet, almost unfamiliar. Hari continued his work with the same diligence, but the days stretched endlessly. Every morning he watered the garden with slower movements, pausing at moments he never used to. Every evening he left the mansion later than usual, as if the empty rooms were holding him back for reasons he couldn't explain. The note she had left, folded neatly and kept inside his wallet, was the only thing that kept him steady. "Take care of your heart, too." Those words glowed like warm lantern light in an otherwise silent world. 3 days later, Layla returned. Her car stopped at the gate, and she stepped out with the poise of a woman accustomed to masking exhaustion behind dignity. Hari hurried towards the entrance to help lift her suitcase. She gave him a brief, tired smile, one that touched him more deeply than he expected. That evening, she called him into the dining room. Her posture was composed, yet her eyes carried a restless storm. "Hari," she began slowly, "my family wants me to consider an arranged marriage again." Hari froze, the words piercing him like cold rain. He lowered his gaze at once, unable to hide the ache spreading through his chest. "They think," Layla continued, "that I need a partner closer to my age with a similar social status, someone who fits their expectations." Hari said nothing. He simply stared at the polished wooden floor, hands trembling slightly behind his back. Layla's voice softened. "I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. Instead, I came home with a question." Hari looked up, hesitant, unsure, almost afraid. "If I choose a different path," she said quietly, "one that doesn't match what the world expects, will you stand with me?" Hari inhaled sharply. For a moment he couldn't speak. His throat tightened with emotions he had buried for weeks. "Madame, I never wanted you to choose me," he whispered. "I only wanted to stay within my boundaries." "I don't need boundaries," Layla replied, her voice steady. "I need honesty." Hari closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, there was a raw sincerity in them. "If you truly decide to walk away from all of that, I will not run. I will fight. I cannot promise the world will change, but I can promise I won't leave your side." It was the most truthful pledge he had ever given. From that night onward, the nature of their relationship changed. They no longer spoke in vague hints or careful avoidance. They finally allowed conversation to take shape, about possibilities, uncertainties, and dreams that felt too fragile to touch. They discussed the idea of marrying quietly, far from Qatar's watchful eyes. They spoke of living simply in India, maybe in Hari's small hometown, or perhaps in a place neither fully belonged to, like Malaysia or Turkey. Nothing was certain. Everything was difficult. Yet for the first time, both of them saw a shared road ahead, even if that road was narrow, steep, and scattered with obstacles. But sometimes, love doesn't ask for ease. It only asks for courage. The days that followed were filled with a quiet urgency neither of them had experienced before. Each sunrise felt heavier, each evening felt shorter. Since the moment Layla confessed her willingness to walk away from everything for him, time no longer flowed gently. It ticked loudly, like a countdown neither of them could ignore. Then came the news that shook everything. Hari's work visa would expire in 2 months. Layla had always known the residency system in Qatar was complicated, but when she began researching the details, reality hit her like a storm. Hari's position as a domestic worker made his status nearly impossible to convert, no matter how sincere they were, no matter how much she earned or how well respected she was. Rules were rules, and those rules did not bend easily. That evening they met in the garden. The air was heavy with humidity and anxiety. Layla's expression was tight, her eyes dim. "Hari," she said softly, "we don't have much time." He nodded, his face calm but shadowed with sadness. "I know, madam. I've spoken to legal advisors," she continued. "Every option seems blocked. They said..." It is nearly impossible, Hari remained silent. A man who had faced poverty, loss, and the weight of family responsibilities knew how to accept harsh truths, but this truth felt different because it wasn't just about him anymore. Layla took a step closer. For the first time, she reached out and gently touched his hand. The simple contact stunned him. "Hari," she whispered, "I'm not afraid of bureaucracy. I'm only afraid of losing you." Hari swallowed hard. His voice trembled when he finally spoke. "Madam, I am not afraid of losing time. I am only afraid of losing you." The honesty of that moment shifted something between them. For years, Layla had lived behind walls of professionalism and pride. Yet here she was, holding the hand of a man society said she should never love. And here Hari stood, fearful not of judgment, but of hurting the woman who had given him dignity. As the days went on, the urgency deepened. Layla spent late nights calling legal offices, asking friends for advice, even researching immigration laws of neighboring countries. Her laptop became a battlefield of open tabs and rejected possibilities. Meanwhile, Hari quietly began preparing himself. He didn't complain, he never showed panic, but he started saving more money, reducing every expense, and even began messaging friends back home to understand what awaited him if he returned suddenly. One night, after hours of searching, Layla finally closed her laptop and called Hari into the living room. The soft glow of the corner lamp illuminated her tired face. "I've made a decision," she said. Hari stood still, bracing himself for the worst. "I will come with you," she said plainly. Hari's breath caught. "Madam?" "What?" "I'm leaving Qatar," she repeated. "I'm done living under rules that crush what's human. I want to live where we can breathe freely, even if the life is simple. I choose that. I choose you." For a long time, Hari couldn't speak. His eyes glistened with a disbelief born from years of thinking himself unworthy of anything extraordinary. That night, something inside both of them solidified. A promise, a beginning, a decision that would change both their lives forever. 2 months later, the heavy blue doors of Doha International Airport slid open, and Layla stepped into the warm, humid air of Surabaya beside Hari. Although she had traveled the world for medical conferences, this time the journey felt different. It was not work, not duty, not prestige. It was a leap of faith, a step into a life she had never imagined for herself. For Hari, it was the moment he had prayed for but never believed would actually happen, that a woman like her would choose a life like his. From Surabaya, they traveled by car to Malang, the city Hari had grown up near. The 4-hour drive wound through green hills, rice fields, and small towns buzzing with daily life. Everything felt unfamiliar to Layla. Children running barefoot, vendors selling fried snacks on bamboo carts, motorcycles weaving through traffic, old houses leaning against each other like tired companions. And yet nothing felt frightening. Hari sat beside her the entire journey, occasionally glancing at her with concern, as if making sure she did not regret her decision. When they reached Hari's old home in a quiet hillside village, Layla stepped out and took a slow breath. The house was modest, a wooden structure with a tin roof, cement floors, and a small veranda supported by uneven pillars. Around it grew wild plants, banana trees, and a few marigold bushes, bright and cheerful despite the simplicity of their surroundings. "This is my home," Hari said softly, almost apologetically. "It's small, but it's beautiful," Layla finished for him. The sincerity in her voice surprised him. He had expected discomfort, perhaps even shock. But instead, she smiled gently, like someone recognizing a long-lost truth. Life in the village was nothing like the quiet, polished luxury of Doha. Here, mornings began with roosters crowing. Women swept their verandas with long brooms. Men carried sacks of rice or bundles of vegetables to the market. Layla found herself cooking rice on a simple gas stove, washing her clothes by hand, and learning how to sweep the yard with a bamboo broom. At first, her movements were awkward. She dropped utensils, spilled water, and laughed at herself more times than she could count. But Hari was patient, always standing nearby to guide her. Neighbors peeked curiously through their windows. Children whispered, "Is she really from Qatar?" Some villagers judged quietly, unsure why a wealthy Arab woman would choose such a life. Others admired her courage, and many simply welcomed her with warm smiles, offering fresh fruits or homemade snacks. Slowly, the village became home. For Hari, each day felt surreal. Layla no longer called him Madame. She called him Hari, and sometimes Hari G when she was teasing him. They cooked together, cleaned together, walked through the market together. In Qatar, he had been her employee. Here, he was her equal. Weeks passed. When they finally decided to marry, it wasn't in a grand hall or luxurious hotel. They stood under a simple blue tent near Hari's house, with village officials, close neighbors, and a handful of old friends. Layla wore a soft cotton sari, pale blue with silver edges. Hari wore a clean white kurta. There was no music, no decorations, no extravagance. But in their eyes, there was a quiet happiness that no palace could match. They had left behind a world of rules and stepped into a world they would build together, brick by brick, heart by heart. After their simple wedding under the blue tent, life began to settle into a gentle, meaningful rhythm. The village slowly adjusted to the presence of the elegant foreign woman who swept her own veranda, bought vegetables from the local market, and greeted neighbors with a shy smile. What surprised everyone most was not her past nor her wealth, but how effortlessly she embraced the simplicity of village life. With the small savings she had brought from Qatar, Layla opened a modest health clinic near the entrance of the village. It wasn't luxurious, just 2 rooms, a metal examination table, a shelf of medicines, and a desk where she kept her patient records. Yet it quickly became a blessing for the villagers. Pregnant women sought her guidance. Children with fevers were brought to her doorstep. Elderly villagers finally received blood pressure checkups they had ignored all their lives. Layla worked tirelessly, and every evening when she returned home, she found Hari waiting with a cup of tea. "How was the clinic today?" he would ask, and she would tell him stories of the people she treated, the babies she calmed, the women she reassured. Listening to her speak, Hari often felt his chest warm with pride. She had left everything behind: comfort, status, wealth, yet she stood stronger than ever. Hari also returned to farming, taking care of his small plot of land where he planted tomatoes, green chilies, cabbage, and spinach. Every morning, he cycled to the market with baskets full of fresh produce. The villagers respected him, not because of his wife's background, but because of the humility with which he continued his life. He never boasted, never acted superior, never changed the way he treated people. The only difference now was the joyful calmness on his face. In the evenings, after dinner, they often sat on the veranda together. The sky above was a blanket of stars, something Layla had never truly appreciated in Doha's bright city lights. "I didn't know peace could feel like this," she once whispered. Harry smiled softly. Peace comes where the heart feels free. Sometimes they walked to the edge of the rice fields. The smell of wet soil after rain, the sound of cicadas, the distant call of a farmer returning home. These small things became precious to Layla. Simplicity taught her what luxury never had: contentment. Of course, not everyone saw their happiness with kindness. A few villagers whispered about the unusual marriage. Some questioned why a wealthy Arab woman would settle in a modest Indian home. Others claimed she wouldn't last long in village conditions. But Layla had endured stricter judgments in Qatar. Compared to that, these whispers were nothing more than gentle breezes. And yet, despite the challenges, their bond grew stronger each day. They learned each other's habits, laughed at each other's mistakes, and shared dreams without fear. Layla often helped Hari pronounce English words, while Hari taught her how to fold a sari properly or make spicy potato curry without burning the pan. Their life wasn't perfect, but it was real, built on understanding, sacrifice, and a love neither of them had expected at this stage of life. And though they lived far from the grand halls of Doha in that small village house, they had finally discovered what home truly meant. A year slipped by gently, like pages turning in a book neither of them wanted to end. Layla and Hari had created a life stitched together with small joys: warm tea at sunset, laughter echoing in the veranda, the rhythmic sound of rain on the tin roof, and the comfort of knowing that even in silence, they were never alone. Yet time had one more miracle waiting for them, one they never dared to expect. One morning, while treating a young mother at the clinic, Layla suddenly felt lightheaded. Her hands shook slightly, and she had to steady herself against the wall. Concerned, the patient insisted she rest, and Layla reluctantly sat down. All afternoon, she felt an unusual flutter in her body, a strange warmth she couldn't explain. Hari noticed it the moment she walked through the door that evening. "You look tired," he said gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I'm just a little dizzy today," she replied with a faint smile. But Hari wasn't convinced. He urged her to visit the nearest district hospital for a checkup. After some hesitation, Layla agreed. The doctor ran several tests, asked numerous questions, and then finally looked up with an expression that made Layla's heart stop. "Congratulations," the doctor said softly. "You're pregnant." The world seemed to freeze around her. Pregnant? At 48? It felt impossible, miraculous, overwhelming, frightening, and beautiful all at once. Layla's eyes filled with tears, a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. Hari, who had been waiting anxiously outside, rushed to her side when he saw her emotional expression. "Layla ji, what happened? Are you all right?" She took his hand, her voice trembling. "Hari, we're going to have a baby." For several seconds, Harry could not breathe. His eyes widened and his lips parted in shock. Then, slowly, tears filled his eyes, tears he didn't bother to hide. He knelt beside her, pressing her hands to his forehead. This is God's blessing," he whispered, overcome with emotion. The pregnancy was not easy. The doctor warned them about risks due to Layla's age. She needed rest, careful monitoring, and gentle routines. But Layla wasn't afraid. She had fought harder battles: loneliness, judgment, societal barriers. Compared to that, this challenge felt like a gift. Hari became even more protective, watching her like a guardian. He cooked her meals, massaged her back, fetched warm water, and accompanied her to every checkup. The clinic staff and villagers grew fond of her even more. Some brought home-cooked snacks, others helped clean the clinic so she wouldn't strain herself. Months passed. Their small home was now filled with preparations: Tiny baby clothes from the market, soft blankets, herbal oils, and the quiet excitement that made every dawn special. Layla often placed her hand on her belly, whispering gentle words to the life growing inside her. At night, she would look at Hari reading by the dim lamp and think about the extraordinary path that had brought them here. A journey from two different worlds bound not by wealth or convenience, but by courage and sincerity. Finally, the day arrived when their daughter entered the world, a tiny girl with bright eyes and a soft cry. They named her Naira, meaning light, and indeed, she became the brightest light of their lives. Naira's arrival transformed their small hillside home into a world glowing with new purpose. From the moment she opened her tiny eyes, everything changed. Her soft cries echoed through the wooden walls, her delicate hands clutched Layla's fingers, and her quiet breaths filled the nights with unmatched peace. For Layla, motherhood at 48 was nothing short of a divine miracle. For Hari, fatherhood felt like a blessing he had never dared to dream about. And for both of them, Naira became the living symbol of their courage, the proof that love can bloom even in the most unexpected corners of life. The villagers who had once whispered in suspicion now visited with smiles and gifts, tiny bangles, small blankets, baskets of fruits. Children peeked curiously through the door, asking if they could see the foreign auntie's baby. Older women guided Layla through traditional lullabies, herbal baths, and gentle massages for the newborn. Though some whispers still lingered at the edges of the village, the warmth of those who embraced her soon overshadowed the doubts of others. Layla paused her clinic work temporarily, devoting herself fully to the baby's care. Hari took on additional farming tasks, often waking at dawn to tend to the crops, then hurrying back home to help with diapers, feeding, and soothing Naira at night. Every moment was shared, every giggle, every cry, every sleepless night. One evening, when Naira was about 6 months old, Layla sat on the veranda with her daughter resting peacefully against her chest. Hari came home carrying a small bag of vegetables, his kurta stained with the day's labor, but his face glowing with joy when he saw them. "You look tired," he said lovingly as he set the bag aside. Layla shook her head with a gentle smile. "I have never felt more alive." Hari sat beside her, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and orange. "Sometimes," he said softly, "I still cannot believe this is real. That you left everything for a life like this." Layla looked at him with unwavering tenderness. "Hari, I did not leave a life. I found one." The words warmed him more deeply than any summer breeze. She reached out and took his hand, squeezing it lightly. "Doha had everything: luxury, reputation, comfort. But I had no one to share silence with. No one whose presence brought peace. Here, even the simplest moments feel full." Hari lowered his gaze, humbled. "You gave me dignity, Layla ji. You gave me courage. And now, you have given me a family." They sat like that for a long time, listening to the gentle sounds of the village, the rustling leaves, distant laughter, the low hum of insects awakening in the evening. Naira stirred softly in her arms, and Layla kissed her forehead. Years passed quietly. The clinic flourished, and villagers traveled from nearby towns just to be treated by the gentle doctor with the kind eyes. Hari expanded the farm, growing fresh produce sold in the local market. Their home became a sanctuary of warmth, laughter, and the aroma of simple homemade meals. And every night before sleep,